I'm the neighbouring MP for Lancaster and Fleetwood, and I serve in Jeremy Corbyn's But really, going forward, we have to focus on winning Morecambe and Lunesdale. Morecambe and Lunesdale deserves an MP, a passionate outcome. Morecambe and Lunesdale deserves a Labour MP, and we deserve a Labour government as this country.
Very much, and thank you all for coming. Sorry if we've kept you waiting a bit late. We've had a lot of very good discussions with Foodbank and local community groups in the Melting Pot and other places this morning. And I want to say thank you to all of them and to the Music Forum and others that have given me their time this morning and helped me to understand what they're doing in the community, how they're empowering the community, how they're supporting people who are up against it, and how they're doing their best to regenerate people's lives as well as regenerate the whole town. Thank you to all of them for everything that they do to bring about a stronger community. Thank you to whenever Theresa May finally decides that relying on the DUP to stay in power is not a great idea. We have another general election. We're ready for it, and we're going to be there soon. I want to say a big thank you to Cat Smith, MP for Lancaster and Fleetwood. 2 elections in, she's been elected with a much, much bigger majority the second time than the first, because she's a great MP, because she's so hard-working and articulate and speaks up for the people of that area, as well as a brilliant member of the Shadow Cabinet. I'm very proud that she's part of our team. I'm very proud of the work that she's done in speaking up for voter engagement and for the voice of young people and young women all over the country to make sure they have a voice in our party and around our shadow cabinet table, and we want that same voice to be there around a cabinet table when we have a Labour government in the near future. Think back to the start of the general election campaign. Every one of the national media wrote us off. Every one of the commentariats who were paid vast amounts of money to think deep thoughts on behalf of all of us wrote us all off and told us that the idea of an election manifesto that promised to redistribute wealth in the opposite direction in which it's going at the moment was something that would be deeply unpopular and would have no popular resonance whatsoever. And the idea of a government that would invest money in the future of all parts of the country was all pie in the sky. It's vital, absolutely, in an election to knock on doors and identify how people will vote in an election, so that on polling day itself, on the day the vote is actually cast, except for those that vote by post, we knock on the doors ever so politely at 9 in the morning and just remind them politely it's election day and we're going to be kind enough to vote. By midday you're slightly less polite. By 4 in the afternoon, you're slightly more assertive. By 6 o'clock, you're beginning to sound desperate. By 9 o'clock, you can be as blunt as you like and tell them to get out there and actually cast their vote if they want to make a difference in our society. And the game changer, the important point in the whole election campaign was, I believe, the production of our manifesto. Because it was written in 2 weeks, so we didn't have a lot of time to do it, and I pay an enormous tribute to those that wrote it and put so much effort into it. Because that manifesto promised what we want to do, which is to challenge the idea that austerity is somehow or other an economic necessity, that the banking crisis of 2008 to 9 has to be paid for by freezing public sector workers' pay, by cutting council expenditure, by freezing NHS expenditure, by creating more and more poverty, by freezing wages in the private sector, and by reducing investment all across the country. Money was found to bail out the banks and make sure they were okay, and then the whole austerity kicked in from 2010. The Tories and the Lib Dems got together to slash public expenditure, slash investment, and reduce the life chances and opportunities of so many people, disproportionately hitting the poorest areas of the country, disproportionately hitting the poorest people of this country. The fact there are so many homeless on our streets is not an accident. It's not an accident of theirs. It's a design because there is not enough investment going into new, affordable council housing for people all across the country. It's an effect of the cuts in the benefit system. It's an effect of the brutality of what austerity has done to so many people's lives in this country. Why is it that so many people in work still have to access food banks in order to get enough to eat? It's not right, it's not necessary, but something tells me it is simply morally wrong that in a society so rich, we have so many that need to use a food bank in order just to survive from one week to the other. And we challenge them on the economic strategy they're following. We put forward the idea of a national investment bank in the election campaign, which would be part funded by borrowing, part funded by direct government intervention, and it would be regionally based in all parts of the country, so there would be a northwest basis for the National Investment Bank that could ensure there was fairness of investment across the whole of the UK. We got a lot of lectures about the Northern Powerhouse before June the 8th, and straight after June the 8th we saw the effect of the Northern Powerhouse with the cancellation of most of the railway electrification programmes all across the north of England. Well, that says it all about the Tories. A Labour government would properly devolve that responsibility to regional investment banks to make sure that proper transport infrastructure investment went ahead all across all regions of the country, and it wasn't just on the basis of which region, usually London or South East, can lobby the hardest to get the most. That has to be the right thing to do, because I think it is appalling that the general narrative given in Western economies at the moment is to every young person and a younger generation, sorry, you're growing up at this time, sorry, you're not going to get free education, sorry, you might not get free healthcare in the future, sorry, your pension is under threat for the future, you better make your own individualistic preparations for the future. Surely what we're about as a movement and a party is about the collective good of a community coming together. That's why that Labour government of 1945, with all the problems it faced, brought in a national health service, healthcare free at the point of use as a human right. They did it because they believed it. They did it because it was in the principles of what our movement is about. And it will be the Labour Party and the Labour government that will strengthen our NHS, end the dicing up, slicing up and carving up of the NHS through private sector provision, through privatisation, and through the cuts and closures that are threatened at the present time. Will it cost? Yes. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Yes. And I'm also concerned that we have to look at the crisis in the NHS in part created by the crisis in the social care system. the lack of provision. There's around 1 million people at any one time waiting to get the social care they support, need and deserve. We have to make sure they get it. Likewise, we have to make sure there is real parity of esteem between mental health services and physical health services and the mental health crisis. We do this because we're a party in which the democracy of our party has come through and those policies have been put forward. As I said at the beginning, all of you have unique experiences and ideas and knowledge that should be brought as part of it. So please do think about how a Labour government would affect what goes on here in Morecambe, how you would improve the artistic opportunities in Morecambe. It seems a bit sad that the city that produced Eric Morecambe doesn't have as many theatres as it did in the days when he grew up here. Perhaps we could change that around in the future. And in our campaigning, we also recognise our responsibilities to communities as a whole. Since Brexit and since the awful events that happened in Manchester, in London and in Finsbury Park, and yesterday another disaster happened in Barcelona, there's a danger that that turns into Islamophobia, turns into anti-Semitism, turns into racism of some horrible forms. And yesterday I was talking to a group of women in a mosque in Pendle about their experiences, as indeed I talk to people in my own constituency about all of this. We have a responsibility, as they did in Manchester, after what happened there, to bring people and communities together. We don't blame entire communities, we don't blame faiths, we don't blame groups as a whole. We blame criminals for causing criminal acts and we protect ourselves against them. But above all, we strengthen the sense of community, unity and coming together in the face of a common threat. We don't divide ourselves. But elections, as you all know, are not won in the 3, 4 or 5 weeks of the intensity of the election campaign. They're won by what we do all the year round, why we're there supporting people. When Cat Smith was elected MP for Lancaster, she'd worked very hard to win that first election and got a victory, defeated a sitting Tory MP, and it was a Labour gain. Fantastic result. Cat got stuck in straight away as a local MP, and I've never forgotten the way in which she responded to the people of that town when the flood took place. She was out there with her boots on, helping people in a practical way, in living their life, supporting them. Because that's what Labour does. That's what we are. We are the community. We are the party of the community. And that is the strength of the community. I was going to compare the event because as a party, we campaigned in the election. What was powerful about it was bringing people together. That spirit of doing things together. When you're doing things together, you feel stronger, you feel bolder, you feel more empowered, and that infects those people that then come along and support us. Our membership is growing, 575,000, and still rising. I'm very proud of that. Very proud of the number of people that are coming to our conference. Proud of what we've achieved. But absolutely determined. We take the fight to the Tories. We challenge them. Are we to be a country of ever richer minority of people and an ever impoverished number at the other end and deep insecurity in between? Or are we to be a country that does care for all, that does ensure we have a serious, sensible, tariff-free trade relationship with Europe in future? A country that is determined to conquer inequality and poverty and unleash the spirit and potential that's there in everybody, and a society that cares, or a society that walks by on the other side. We know where we've come from as a party, we know why we exist as a party, we know what we've achieved as a party, and we know what we can achieve in the future. Thank you very much, and all the best.